Welcome back to the channel, folks, where we dive into the wild, wonderful world of men transforming into women in all kinds of fascinating ways. If that's your vibe, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Now let's jump right into today's story. 3.5 days later, Monday morning, the world returned slowly, like the tide creeping in after a long storm. First came sound, distant, muffled, as if heard through layers of cotton, the soft whir of the ceiling fan. Birds chirping beyond the window, the faint creak of floorboards somewhere in the house. Then sensation, the cool sheets against her skin, impossibly soft now, registering every thread count. The gentle pressure of the pillow beneath her head, the weight of the blanket across her transformed body. Finally, consciousness, thoughts forming slowly, piecing together fragments of memory, of identity, of self. Emma's eyes blinked open, heavy with sleep and sunlight. Her throat was dry, her body aching in a strangely unfamiliar way. She turned her head slightly on the pillow, the motion sluggish and disoriented, her breath shallow. The room came into focus gradually. The familiar walls, the dresser, the curtains billowing slightly in the morning breeze. Everything looked the same. And yet, everything felt different. Not just numb or sore-like after the last phase. This was something deeper, more fundamental. A profound alteration at her very core, as if the foundation of her physical being had been completely restructured. Something's missing, was her first coherent thought. No, not missing, changed. She shifted slightly beneath the covers, trying to take inventory of her transformed body. Her breasts felt fuller, heavier against her chest. Her skin tingled with heightened sensitivity. But the most striking difference was lower. In her pelvic region, a strange emptiness where familiar anatomy had once been, replaced by a new sensation she couldn't immediately identify. She swallowed hard, her lips cracked and parched. "Water," she rasped, her voice a husky whisper of what it once was. Even those two syllables felt different in her mouth, her vocal cords producing a sound that was softer, more melodic than before. Phase 3 had refined even this aspect of her transformation, bringing her voice fully into feminine registers. Just then, the door creaked open. Claire stepped in, holding a folded towel and a small bottle of lotion, assuming it would be another routine check-in. But the moment she saw Emma's eyes open, she froze in place. "Emma," she breathed, setting the items down quickly and hurrying to the bedside. "You're awake." The relief in her voice was palpable. 3.5 days of waiting, of watching, of wondering when consciousness would return. 3.5 days of witness to the most profound phase of Emma's transformation. Emma gave a faint, crooked smile. Barely. Her lips felt different, forming the word. Fuller, more sensitive. Even this simple act of speech required recalibration, her body learning to operate with its newly completed female anatomy. Claire reached for the water glass on the nightstand, helping her sit up just enough to sip from the straw. The cool water soothed her throat like a balm. The simple act of sitting up revealed more changes, the way her body bent at the waist, the distribution of weight as she shifted position. The newfound awareness of emptiness between her legs, replaced by a different sensation entirely. "How long was I out?" Emma asked after several grateful sips, her voice still raspy but stronger. "Almost 4 days," Claire replied, setting the glass back down. "Longer than the other phases." Dr. Langford said that was expected. This transformation was the most comprehensive. "That's one way of putting it," Emma murmured. Emma drank slowly, eyes wandering, her senses still dull and foggy. But as her mind caught up with her body, she began to notice. Her chest felt heavier, fuller yet again. The breasts that had developed during phase 2 had matured further, reaching their final form, perfectly proportioned to her frame, soft yet firm, undeniably feminine. Her skin was impossibly soft, smooth. Gone was any hint of masculine texture, the slight roughness Michael had maintained even after the earlier transformations. Now her skin had the silky quality that characterized female dermal structure, more delicate, more responsive to touch. Her limbs felt longer, more elegant, though she hadn't grown taller. If anything, she might have lost another half-inch in height. Her proportions had refined further, her arms more gracefully shaped, her legs seeming longer relative to her torso. And then, she shifted slightly under the covers and paused. Her brow furrowed. There was a void. Not pain. Not discomfort. Just absence. Where once had been the most definitive aspect of her male anatomy, the last remnant of Michael, now there was nothing. Or rather, not nothing, but something else entirely. Something new, unfamiliar, yet intrinsically part of her. It really happened, she thought, a wave of realization washing over her. The final change. I'm completely female now. A hollow space inside her, where something had once been. The transformation hadn't simply removed her male anatomy, it had replaced it with fully formed female reproductive organs. What she felt wasn't absence but presence. The presence of a uterus, ovaries, vaginal canal, a complete female reproductive system where male organs had been just days before. "How are you feeling?" Claire asked softly, her eyes scanning Emma's face for signs of distress or confusion. "I don't know," Emma answered honestly. "Different. Very different." "That's understandable," Claire replied. "Your body has undergone its most significant change yet." Her hand drifted slowly beneath the sheet, down to her lower belly. There was no longer that lingering presence of her former self. It was gone, completely gone. The anatomy that had defined her as male for 35 years had been absorbed, transformed, repurposed into female structures. Just warmth, softness, a new center, a new body, a new reality. The completion of a metamorphosis that had begun weeks ago and had now reached its conclusion. She pressed gently against her abdomen, feeling the strange, delicate fullness there. The sensation was bizarre. Pressure against organs she'd never possessed before. Awareness of spaces within her body that hadn't existed days ago. Her hand moved lower, hovering just above where the most dramatic change had occurred, not quite ready to explore further. Claire noticed the motion. Her expression softened. "Welcome to womanhood, Emma," she said quietly, brushing a few strands of hair from Emma's forehead. There was something ceremonial in the simple phrase, an acknowledgement of the threshold that had been crossed, the transformation that was now complete. Emma looked up at her, dazed. It's gone." The words felt inadequate to express the magnitude of the change, the profound alteration of her most fundamental biology. Claire nodded, her eyes tender. "Yes. Phase 3 is complete. You're fully transitioned now. Inside and out." "How did it?" Emma began, then paused, unsure how to phrase the question. "I mean, the process, was it?" "Remarkable," Claire supplied. "Dr. Langford monitored everything. She said it was like watching evolution in fast forward, cells repurposing themselves, structures reorganizing, new tissues forming where others had been." "That sounds..." Emma searched for the right word. "Miraculous," Claire suggested. "I was going to say terrifying," Emma replied with a weak smile. "But miraculous works too, I suppose." Emma's hand remained on her belly. She didn't know what to say. There wasn't anything to say. Words seemed insignificant in the face of such profound physical transformation. What language could possibly capture the experience of having one's reproductive system completely replaced, of waking up with an entirely different biological architecture? She was a woman now. Not in theory. Not almost. Not someday. Now. Now. Complete in every biological aspect, every anatomical detail. The transformation that had begun with her skeletal structure, continued through her secondary sexual characteristics, had now reached its culmination with the development of complete female reproductive organs. "Does it hurt?" Claire asked gently, noting how Emma's hand remained protectively over her lower abdomen. Emma considered the question, taking a moment to assess the sensations in her body. "Not exactly pain," she replied slowly. "More like awareness. Like I can feel these new parts of me adjusting, settling. It's strange." "That makes sense." Claire nodded. "Your nervous system is mapping these new structures, learning to interpret signals from anatomy you've never had before. It's like my body's running a systems check on new hardware," Emma said, attempting humor despite the surreal nature of the situation. Claire smiled at the analogy. "Oh, that's not a bad way of looking at it." Claire sat back slightly. "We'll schedule a doctor's appointment later today, just to make sure everything is progressing properly. For now, just rest. Let yourself adjust. You've been through a lot." "You can say that again," Emma murmured. "I'm not sure the human body was designed for this much change in such a short time." "Yours has handled it remarkably well," Claire observed. "Dr. Langford says your transformation has been textbook perfect, better than they could have hoped for." "Oh, lucky me," Emma replied with a hint of her old dry humor. Overachieving, even at biological impossibilities. Emma leaned back slowly against the pillow, her breath steadying. Her body was foreign, but not wrong. That was perhaps the most surprising aspect of this final transformation, how quickly her mind seemed to accept this new configuration, as normal as right. There was no sense of loss, no grief for the anatomy that had been replaced. Just a strange sense of completion, as if a puzzle had finally been solved. Just new. A new reality to adapt to. A new body to learn to inhabit. A new future unfolding before her, one that would include experiences Michael could never have imagined. Claire stood, giving her a reassuring smile before quietly leaving the room. "I'll check on you in a bit," she promised, her hand on the doorknob. "John's been worried sick. He'll be relieved to know you're awake." "John," Emma repeated, suddenly remembering. "He was there when it started." "He caught you when you collapsed," Claire confirmed. "Carried you to the car and brought you home. He's barely left the house since, always checking if you were awake yet." A warm feeling bloomed in Emma's chest at the thought, the image of John's concerned face, his protective instincts, his quiet vigilance during her transformation. "Tell him I'm okay," she said softly. "And thank him for being there." Claire nodded. "I will. Rest now." The door closed behind her with a faint click. Emma lay in silence, the ceiling fan spinning slowly above her, her fingers still resting gently on her lower stomach. The morning light cast soft shadows across the room, highlighting the gentle rise and fall of her chest beneath the blanket. She was aware of every sensation, the brush of fabric against her newly sensitive skin, the subtle pressure of the mattress beneath her, the strange emptiness yet fullness between her legs. There was no going back now. The transformation was complete. Michael was gone, not just in name or appearance, but in the most fundamental biological sense. Every cell, every organ, every structure had been remade according to Claire's genetic template, creating a fully female body where a male one had existed just weeks before. And in 9 months, give or take. The thought settled over her with newfound significance. A reality that had been theoretical until now, suddenly concrete, irrefutable. With this final transformation, the true purpose of this entire process could now be fulfilled. She would give birth. Her hand pressed more firmly against her abdomen, imagining the changes that would soon occur there. The gradual swelling, the movement of new life, the ultimate expression of the female biology she now possessed. The child she would carry would be genetically Claire and John's, created from their DNA, nurtured in Emma's womb. A miracle of science and transformation that defied conventional understanding of reproduction. I'm going to be a mother, she thought, the concept both alien and strangely fitting. Or at least, my body will perform that function. The room was quiet, save for the gentle whirring of the ceiling fan and the distant sounds of life continuing in the house beyond her door. But within Emma, a profound shift had occurred. The final piece of her transformation clicking into place, completing the metamorphosis from Michael to Emma. Not just in appearance, not just in name, but in the most fundamental biological reality. She was, in every meaningful sense, female now. And with that realization came a quiet acceptance, not excitement, not dismay, but a simple acknowledgement of this new reality. This was her body now. This was her future. The transformation was complete. Later that morning, on Monday, 10:42 a.m., Emma took one more deep breath as she descended the stairs, each step slow and careful. Her body felt simultaneously lighter and heavier. Lighter in that strange way that comes after a long illness, when fever finally breaks, but heavier with the profound awareness of fundamental change. Her center of gravity had shifted yet again, this time in subtle ways that made even familiar movements require conscious thought. One step at a time, she reminded herself, gripping the banister more firmly than she would have before. Literally and figuratively. She was wearing the loosest, most comfortable clothes she could find, a necessity after days of lying unconscious while her body underwent its most dramatic transformation yet. Even so, the fabric seemed to register against her skin with heightened intensity. Every brush of cotton triggering nerve endings that seemed newly installed and hypersensitive. The shower had been necessary. After more than 3 days unconscious, she couldn't stand the feeling of grime that clung to her skin. But the moment the hot water hit her, she realized this wasn't just a rinse. This was the first time she had truly been alone with her new body. Fully new. Oh, she had gasped as the spray first hit her shoulders, the sensation almost overwhelming in its intensity. Where previous showers had been routine, functional, this was an exercise in sensory discovery, each droplet registering with crystalline clarity. Each change in temperature, eliciting immediate response from her transformed skin. She had taken her time, not out of vanity, but out of sheer, stunned curiosity. Standing under the warm cascade, she allowed herself to fully acknowledge the reality of her completed transformation. No more Michael. No remnants, no lingering anatomical vestiges. Just Emma, wholly, completely female in every biological aspect. I'm someone else entirely, she had thought, watching rivulets of water trace paths over curves that hadn't existed weeks ago. Or rather, I'm the same person in an entirely different package. The first thing she noticed was how sensitive she was. Not in a painful way, just aware. The change went beyond skin deep. It was as if her entire nervous system had been recalibrated, tuned to a higher frequency, responsive to stimuli that would have barely registered before. What had once been background noise was now foreground sensation. Every drop of water that struck her skin felt more vivid, as if her entire body had been turned up to max volume. Her nipples responded immediately to the warmth, tightening under the spray in ways that made her blush even though she was alone. "Well, that's new," she had murmured, surprised by the immediate physical response and the unexpected pleasure pain that accompanied it. Where Michael's body had been relatively straightforward in its sensory responses, Emma seemed to contain entire symphonies of sensation. She ran her hands down her sides, fingers brushing over her smooth belly, her widened hips, and the gentle swell of her thighs. The transformation had refined her already feminine form, adding subtle curves where there had been angles, softening transitions between hip and waist, between waist and ribcage. Her breasts had developed further, fuller, more maturely shaped, perfectly proportioned to her frame. But the most profound change lay below. And then, of course, she had to pee. That's when it hit her. How? The realization had risen with sudden urgency. A basic bodily function now requiring a completely different approach. A mundane necessity that underscored the profound nature of her transformation in ways that abstract contemplation never could. She sat down. There was no other option. No standing, no aiming, no familiar ritual of masculine relief. Just the unfamiliar sensation of emptying her bladder through entirely new anatomical structures. The change wasn't just skin deep. Her entire anatomy had been rewritten. "This is going to take some getting used to," she had muttered, adjusting to this most fundamental of changes. Even this simple bodily function required relearning, reconceptualizing her physical relationship with the world. She felt empty down there. Not in a painful sense, but in a way that made her feel strangely hollow. Where familiar anatomy had once existed, there was now absence, or, rather, different presence. The solid had become void. The external had become internal. Male physicality replaced by female concavity. She touched her lower abdomen again, gently. There was something there, but not where it had once been. A new center. A new source. Inside, rather than outside. Potential space rather than constant presence. A fundamental reorganization of her most intimate biology. And yet, even with all the changes, there was still a phantom feeling. A weird ghost-like awareness of what used to be. Like her body still hadn't fully let go of its previous form. Like an amputee with a phantom limb, she had thought while drying herself after the shower. Except I haven't lost something so much as had it repurposed. She didn't know if that was normal. Was that just her? Or did all women feel that at some stage? Does Claire feel this? So many questions. Questions about her body, about her future, about the pregnancy that would soon begin now that her transformation was complete. Questions that only Claire could answer. Claire, who had lived her entire life in a female body, who understood its rhythms and responses in ways Emma was only beginning to grasp. But right now, only one thing truly dominated her mind. Food. Why? The hunger had started tapping at her during the shower. By the time she was towel drying her hair, it was pounding like a drum. Now, as she padded barefoot down the stairs in a soft white tank top and baggy gray sweatpants that sat low on her hips, her belly gave another loud, impatient growl. "Good Lord," she muttered, pressing a hand against her stomach. "You'd think I hadn't eaten in weeks." In truth, it had been days. Days of intravenous nutrition while her body focused all its energy on the profound transformation of her reproductive system. Now that the change was complete, her metabolism was demanding replenishment with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. When she turned the corner into the kitchen, she found both Claire and John already there. The domestic normalcy of the scene struck her as almost comically incongruous with the extraordinary changes she had just undergone. Here was the kitchen, unchanged, the same countertops, the The same coffee maker, the same morning light streaming through the windows. As if the world hadn't tilted on its axis while she transformed upstairs. Claire was leaning against the counter, phone to her ear, speaking in a calm but businesslike tone. John sat at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee and flipping through something on his tablet. As soon as Emma entered, both of them looked up. John's eyes widened slightly, just a flicker of surprise at the sight of her. Her wet hair was tied up in a messy bun, her top clinging slightly to her still damp skin, and her waist now visibly narrower above the soft swell of her hips. She saw him register the changes, subtle but unmistakable. The additional fullness of her breasts, the more pronounced curve of her waist, the slight alteration in how she carried herself. His expression shifted from surprise to something more complex, concern mixed with something harder to define. "Morning," she said, her voice still slightly rough from disuse. "Or whatever time it is." Claire's expression softened instantly, though she didn't interrupt her call. She held up a finger as if to say 1 sec, and turned slightly away to finish her conversation with whoever was on the line, clearly the doctor. Emma could hear fragments of the discussion. Blood work, pelvic exam, hormone levels, all reminders of the clinical reality underlying her transformation. Not magic, but science. Not miracle, but methodology. John stood up, moving to pull out a chair for Emma without a word. She gave him a faint smile as she sank into it, her hand instinctively cradling her stomach. "Thanks," she murmured, settling into the chair with a slight wince. Her body still ached in unfamiliar places, muscles and tissues adjusting to their new configurations. Still hollow. Still hungry. "You look," John began, then seemed to reconsider his words. "Better. Than yesterday, I mean. Less feverish. Considering yesterday I was unconscious and burning up with transformation fever." "That's not saying much," Emma replied with a small smile. "But thanks for the vote of confidence." John chuckled, though there was still concern in his eyes. "You had us worried." "Join the club," she replied. "I wasn't exactly planning to collapse dramatically in your office. Though I suppose it made for an exciting end to the workday." "Coffee?" John offered, clearly seeking practical ways to help. She nodded. "Please. And a mountain of food, if we have it. I'm starving in ways I didn't know were possible." He chuckled and turned toward the coffee machine. "I think we can manage that. Claire made enough food this morning to feed a small army. Just in case you woke up." "She knows me well," Emma said, then paused at her own words. The statement had layers of meaning she hadn't intended. Claire knew her because Claire was her, genetically speaking. The same DNA, now expressed in 2 different bodies, separated by years of experience, but identical in biological blueprint. Claire hung up a moment later and turned fully to face her. "That was Dr. Lin," she said. "She's going to fit us in this afternoon. Nothing invasive, just a checkup, blood work, and an ultrasound to confirm everything is progressing naturally." "Ultrasound," Emma repeated, her hand unconsciously pressing against her lower abdomen. "Already. But I'm not, there's nothing to see yet, right?" "Not a pregnancy ultrasound," Claire clarified. "A structural one. To confirm that all your new parts are where they should be, and functioning properly." "My new parts," Emma echoed with a wry smile. "That's one way of putting it. Would you prefer a completely reconstructed reproductive system?" Claire asked with a raised eyebrow. "Or perhaps biology that defies conventional medical understanding?" "New parts works fine," Emma conceded. "Though it makes me sound like some kind of biological hybrid vehicle." "Well, in a way," John began from where he stood by the coffee machine. "Don't finish that sentence if you value your life," Emma warned, though there was no real heat in her tone. The banter felt good, normal, Familiar, a thread of continuity amid the profound changes. Emma nodded slowly, still adjusting to the sound of her own voice, softer, lighter, but still hers. The pitch had risen further during this final transformation, settling into a register that was unmistakably feminine, but retained hints of her original cadence and inflection. "Claire," she said quietly, rubbing the heel of her hand against her belly, "can I ask you something kind of personal?" Claire stepped closer, her tone immediately gentle. "Of course." There was no hesitation in her response, just open willingness to share whatever knowledge or experience might help Emma navigate this unprecedented transformation. The bond between them had deepened through this process, transcending conventional relationships to become something unique and powerful. That feeling, Emma hesitated, searching for the words. Of being empty down there? Like something's missing. But also like something's new and unfamiliar. And there's this weird ghost, like sense of what used to be, like it's still there, even though it's not. Did you feel that? The question hung in the air, intimate and vulnerable. John busied himself with the coffee, giving them a semblance of privacy while remaining close enough to offer support if needed. Claire smiled softly and pulled up the chair beside her. "I did," she said. "It's part of the adjustment. Your body's changed, but your mind and nervous system are still catching up. It fades. The emptiness becomes fullness. And the phantom feelings. They go quiet eventually. You'll settle into yourself. So, it's normal. This disconnect between what I know is there and what I feel should be there. As normal as anything can be in this situation," Claire replied with a small smile. "Remember, what you're experiencing has never happened before in quite this way. But yes, the phantom sensations are similar to what many experience after significant bodily changes. I guess my brain's still running on old software while the hardware's been completely upgraded," Emma observed. "That's actually a perfect analogy." Claire nodded. "Your neurological system is still operating with maps and patterns developed for your previous anatomy. It takes time to update those pathways." Emma exhaled, her shoulders relaxing. "Okay. Good. I just needed to hear that." The confirmation provided more relief than she had expected. Not just intellectual understanding, but emotional reassurance that what she was experiencing wasn't unusual or concerning. That this too would pass as her mind and body aligned more completely. Claire reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're doing so well, Emma. You're stronger than you think." "I'm not sure strong is the right word," Emma replied. "More like adaptable by necessity. It's not like I had much choice once the process started." "That's what strength often is," Claire countered. "Adapting when circumstances leave you no alternative. And you've adapted to more change in a few weeks than most people experience in a lifetime." Emma gave a small, grateful smile as John set a steaming mug of coffee in front of her, and then a plate full of toast, eggs, and fruit. "I might have gone overboard," he admitted, surveying the heaping plate. "But," Claire said, "your metabolism would be in overdrive after the transformation." "It's perfect," Emma assured him, already reaching for a piece of toast. "I could probably eat twice this amount and still be hungry." Her stomach growled again, louder this time, as if to emphasize her point. She laughed softly as she picked up a fork. "Apparently I'm eating for two now." The words were meant lightly, a simple observation about her dramatic hunger. But they carried unexpected weight as she spoke them, a sudden concrete acknowledgement of what would come next. Now that her transformation was complete, pregnancy would soon follow. The ultimate purpose of this extraordinary metamorphosis. Claire gave her a knowing look, eyes twinkling. "Yes. And it's only going to get more intense from here." "Great," Emma replied, biting into a fork full of eggs. "So I can look forward to being constantly ravenous for the next 9 months. Among other delights." Claire confirmed. Swollen ankles, back pain, frequent bathroom trips, all the joys of creating new life. You're really selling this whole pregnancy thing, Emma observed dryly. Just setting realistic expectations, Claire replied. Though I will say, there are wonderful aspects too. Feeling the baby move for the first time, hearing the heartbeat, it's like nothing else. John watched their exchange with quiet interest, his expression thoughtful. This was, after all, his child they were discussing, his genetic offspring that Emma would carry. The arrangement bound the three of them together in ways that transcended conventional relationships. How soon, he began. Then paused, seeming unsure how to phrase the question. How soon until I'm pregnant? Emma finished for him. I'm not sure. That's probably one of the things Dr. Lin will discuss this afternoon. The plan is to begin fertility treatments almost immediately, Claire explained. Now that your reproductive system is fully formed, we can start the process of preparing your body for embryo transfer. So I'll be taking fertility drugs? Emma asked, continuing to eat between questions. Yes, Claire nodded. To stimulate your ovaries and regulate your cycle. We want to create optimal conditions for implantation. But the embryo will be from your egg and John's sperm, right? Emma clarified. I'm just the housing. The gestational carrier, Claire corrected gently. But yes, genetically, the baby will be ours. As Emma took her first bite, her mind drifted back to the night she passed out. To the wave of heat, the spinning room, the last flicker of Michael. The memory felt distant now, already fading like a dream upon waking. Had it really been only a few days ago? It seemed like another lifetime, another person's experience that she was recalling rather than her own. It was gone now. Michael was gone, not just in name or appearance, but in fundamental biology. Every cell, every tissue, every organ now aligned with her new identity. She was Emma. Fully, completely, irrevocably Emma. Female not just in how the world perceived her, but in her most intimate physical reality. And there was definitely no turning back. The thought settled over her as she continued eating, neither distressing nor particularly exhilarating, simply a fact, as basic and undeniable as the Earth's gravity or the sun's rising. This was her reality now. This body, this identity, this future that would include experiences Michael could never have imagined, including, very soon, pregnancy. So, she said after a moment, reaching for her coffee. What's the cover story for The Office? I'm guessing collapsed due to final phase of unprecedented biological transformation isn't going to fly with RR. John chuckled, seeming relieved by her shift to more practical matters. We've told them you had a severe anaphylactic reaction to something you ate. You'll need a few more days at home to recover, doctor's orders. Which isn't entirely untrue, Claire added. You do need to recover, and a doctor is ordering it. Emma nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. The flavor profile registered differently on her transformed taste buds, richer, more complex, with subtle notes she hadn't detected before. And after that, she asked, when I go back, looking, well, like this. She gestured to her body, where the changes, though subtle compared to earlier transformations, were nonetheless apparent. You've been ill, Claire replied simply. People often lose weight or look different after a significant medical event. No one will question it too closely. And if they do notice changes, John added, we'll attribute it to the medication you're on. Side effects, you know. Emma smiled faintly. Ah, yes, those common medication side effects that completely restructure your reproductive system. I'm sure they'll buy that. People see what they expect to see, Claire reminded her. No one is going to jump to complete biological transformation as an explanation for why you look a bit different." "I suppose you're right," Emma conceded, finishing another piece of toast and reaching for more. Her appetite was showing no signs of abating, her body demanding fuel after the enormous energy expenditure phase. 3. She ate methodically, savoring the flavors that registered with new vividness on her transformed palate. With each bite, each sip, each breath, she was adjusting to this new reality, not just intellectually accepting it but physically inhabiting it, moment by moment. The hollow feeling was still there, the phantom sensations still whispered, but they were already beginning to fade, replaced by a growing awareness of her new physical truth. She was Emma now. Completely. Finally. And whatever came next, pregnancy, childbirth, life beyond, she would face it in this transformed body, with these two people beside her, navigating an uncharted future that none of them could have imagined just months before.